Amy. I thought I'm going to just turn off my screen just now, and you went and said my name.
Sorry, not possible.
Dear Lord Krishna, please help our hearts to open as we sit before you, opening our hearts and our ears, wanting to learn how to come closer to you in grace and in love with everybody around us.
Thank you. Gaur Hari Bol. So now our gathering is officially inaugurated, and welcome you all from Ananda Ashram, North Carolina, to one yet ever fresh version of our weekly satsang, where we dare to show up once again, be seen by each other, be seen by the glance of unconditional love of Sri Hari, and hopefully fall in love with that glance eventually, and return the gaze in the best possible way to everything around us, reminding us that, yeah, ultimately that's the goal of life, right? Not only to fall in love with God, but to fall in love with everything, as everything exists within the divine, in the Sweet Absolute. Nothing exists outside of him, like the beautiful Damodar Lila teaches us when Yashoda is the previous to the Damodar Lila trailer, so to say, when she's inspecting Krishna's mouth and she's seeing everything inside Krishna and Krishna inside everything. Very panentheistic perspective, which gives a very important message, right? There's nothing that exists outside the Sweet Absolute. He doesn't exist outside of anything. So, Chintya Ved Aved. Ved Aved. Different and indifferent, we could say transcendent and immanent. The Supreme is beyond everything, inside everything. He's as far as you want him to be far, and he's as close as he wants to be close. So, here we are, another glorious week, glorious day, with such glorious people as each one of you. So thank you so much for bearing witness to the miracle of Harikatha and Sadhu Sangha and whatever may happen as a result of this bunch of guys interacting with each other, hopefully with honesty and sincerity, and hoping for a miracle. We all need a miracle on a daily basis. So, also, it's a very nice day. Why not? For many reasons. On a personal level, I want to share the news that today I've somehow officially finished the first draft of my 4th book on Krishna's unconditional love. So the book is finished, at least the draft. Let's see what comes after. But today has been that day. And also a few days ago, we have decided to publish the 3rd book that still is on its way on the ever-evolvingness of everything. And we are looking forward to hopefully have that ready in a few months. So let's see. Let's hope for a miracle. But yeah, those are some literary news from these recent days. Let's start, let's say. Whatever you would like to share today, questions, doubts, topics, sharing of hearts in one way or another. So I'm seeing a few hands raised from Austria, California, and Sweden. So let's begin. And let's travel to Austria and invite Mayapur Sangam to make her offering into the fire.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, pranams to you all. I have a question which arises constantly now, and I think it's a time to address it. I think it has to do with my personal, of course it has to do with my personal process right now, where I'm coming out from a period where I made myself smaller, and I reach now into a process where I gain more self-esteem and self-love, and honoring all the good and bad things. But sometimes it's for me challenging to how much is that healthy and how much it's too much. And when I say, okay, this is good how I'm doing it, then I always end it with the sentence, as a servant of love or as a devotee of Krishna, because sometimes I have the feeling I put myself too high on a pedestal or something like this. And when I read the scriptures and they say, of course, I'm not a real devotee, but a devotee should be humble and not claim too much things for themselves or not to feel proud of what someone is doing. And then sometimes it seems contradictory, those things. But I know it's a process and I'm not there yet, but still I would like to have some words how to put those things together.
Yeah, I think the most important part of what you shared, everything is important, but the most important part in terms of a reply to what you share is, I know this is a process and I may not be there yet, but it's part of a process and we have to trust the unfolding of the process. And in one sense, as we already know, we may never feel we are there, ever. That's a paradox of love, no? As we were many times saying, that someone who has divine love won't feel they have divine love, but because there is so much more divine love to be had. So by contrasting whatever we have, which may be a lot, in comparison to the bottomless ocean that is waiting for us, we may end up saying and feeling, I don't have love, though we may have it. That's again what Mahaprabhu said, na prema gandusti darapi harume. In me, there is not even the scent of prem. And he was the ultimate embodiment of that. So that's very paradoxical. So, of course, we are not there. We cannot imitate Mahaprabhu. And so I will say that certain affirmations in terms of self-love are very important for many people. I would say most practitioners are probably to create a proper foundation of self-validation in a healthy way, not in a narcissistic, self-centered way. And once that foundation is properly established, we can, become more and more concerned with loving Krishna for the right reasons, in a way that is not diminishing to who we are, in a way that is not threatening to our self-care, our wholeness. But first, we need to have that foundation in place. Like, I need to love myself in the context of being loved by Krishna, not separate from that. So the problem, as we always say, is not self-love. The problem is separateness. So when I express self-love in a separatistic way, by seeing myself as an independent unit, that's a problem. Not the self-love, but seeing myself as fragmented from reality, from the center. Whether it's self-love in a separatistic way, self-hatred in a separatistic way, anything in a separatistic way, that's a problem. But when we acknowledge who we are, with Krishna in the center, that's the solution to all problems. No? The root cause of all problems, as described in our tradition, is avidya, right? Avidya, which means ignorance. Now, what's the meaning of ignorance, or which are the implications of this avidya? It's not just missing some information, right? And therefore you are ignorant. You don't know things. Of course, that may be also, but my point here is avidya means ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of who am I, who God is, and which is my relationship to Him. And one of the aspects of that is Krishna loves me, and therefore I am the beloved of God. and I can have self-love in the context of that. You follow? Not embracing that is a form of avidya. It's the root cause of all problems. So I will say that a good yardstick to express self-love in a healthy way is, again, is it humbling? Is it dignifying? Is it reminding me of Krishna? Or the opposite is happening? So again, that's why we have talked in the past about self-love in bhakti. No, we don't want bhakti without self-love. That's not bhakti. We don't want self-love without bhakti. That's not self-love. Right? One is spiritual bypassing and dysfunctional spirituality, and the other is self-centeredness and narcissism. So we want the two together, the two integrated self-love in bhakti. So I love myself in bhakti, in Krishna's love for me and for everyone else. No? That's an important point again. Another way to keep this idea healthy is, okay, Krishna loves me, but he loves everyone else as well. And I have to check how I'm relating to that in my daily interactions. Because if it's all about how I'm being loved by Krishna, but I'm not able to extend that same generosity to others, then that's becoming a trap, of course. So these are some of the main ways for us to measure where we are standing in terms of proper self-love. As I like to say, although again, it's paradoxical, but there is a place for us to say, I am amazing. Because Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad-gītā, you are amazing. He has saying that 3 times. So I cannot contradict him. So I can say I am amazing, but I can quickly qualify my statement by declaring, but I haven't done anything for that to be so. I just happen to be amazing. I'm not my own creation. So I don't have any genuine reason to become proud. If we really examine the structure of reality, if we contact reality for what it is, we have 0 reasons to become proud or arrogant. Whether we analyze the soul's amazingness, the love that Krishna is giving to us or to everyone, it's a free, gratuitous gift. It's not something we have earned by our own merit and we deserve, and we have so many reasons to claim rights. So strictly speaking, if we pay close attention to who we are, who God is, what's the relationship, there's absolutely no reason to be proud. Proud and arrogance arise from, again, separateness, a distorted perception of me and others. I'm seeing myself as disconnected from the center, independent, and I'm ascribing false credits, so to say, to whatever I'm doing or saying, whatever. No, so, but from a sober approximation to reality, we have no reason to become proud of anything. Bhakti is a gift that comes to our life. It's not our own creation. We are not our own creation. Krishna, just in case, is not our own creation. So there's so much to be grateful for. There's so much to celebrate, but nothing of that is something to be proud about. That's the real nature of anything that is worthy of gratefulness and celebration. None of those things you can claim and merit of your own separately. So that's why humility is so important, right? Because humility entails acknowledging these facts. But it's a very dignifying act. Again, it's not a diminishing of the self. The humility is just like an increased awareness of your own blessedness, of how gifted you have been. Gifted doesn't mean I created my gifts. No? So humility is a sober, honest recognition of how blessed I am, how many gifts I have, but none of them are my own creation. So on a day-to-day basis, I will say part of our sadhana should be to do some type of mental inventory of all of this. Go through that list. Go through the list that make your life blessed, amazing, unique. And don't forget, again, that that's your list, but everyone else have their own list, even if they are not going through that list daily. Every single soul have their own list of amazingness and giftedness. And if they even are not seeing that, we should be gracious enough to remind them of that by how we relate to them. I remember this word from Harry now, and he says, "The person who is blessing others is someone who is speaking to others about the other people's blessedness." No? So to give a blessing doesn't mean just to, because sometimes we may think, oh, I cannot bless anyone because who am I to bless people? But to bless someone from a humbling place is just, I'm reminding you of how blessed you are. I'm blessing you in that way. I'm reminding you, I'm not just blessing you, I'm reminding you of how blessed you already are. In that way only I'm blessing you. So, yeah, some thoughts. But yeah, I think it's a very important bedrock for our tradition. I remember some months ago, I think it was September last year, in one satsang we did, Bhakti Rasa mentioned, we were talking about this, and she resorted to this idea of the Paribhasa Sutra. No? Paribhasa Sutra means like one short statement around which the whole tradition revolves, the whole book revolves, the whole something revolves. No? So in for example, for us in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Paribhasa Sutra, according to Jiva Goswami, Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything that the Bhagavatam says is to be seen according to that one line. That line puts the whole book in context. So Bhakti Rasa say that time, so I think this idea of Krishna loves you and therefore we are beloved, and I can love myself and others on that foundation, is like another Paribhasa Sutra that should be all our practices and all our ideas and notions should be filtered through that, should match that center. So our practice remains coherent in the proper context. And many times we need to do that as a daily exercise, because for many years we have heard the opposite. So it's not just about, okay, Krishna loves you, next topic. We may need to emphasize that enough to counteract sometimes years of trauma of hearing the exact opposite idea, like you are never enough, you are not loved until and unless you become perfect. Krishna doesn't care for you, on long list of that stuff, right? So we have to pay attention how much we need to emphasize that particular Paribhasa Sutra, and how much all our reading and understanding of the tradition and our practice and our experience should be passing through this, should be seen as orbiting around this center of you are loved. Krishna is love, and therefore everything is loved. I'm reminded of this beautiful line from that's very interesting. This came recently as I was writing this fourth book on unconditional love, that there is this one line from the Taittiriya Upanishad, Rasa Vaisaha Rasam Hiyevayam Latuhanandi Bhavati. Rupa Goswami takes that line and makes his whole Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu out of that. And our whole tradition comes out of that. So in one sense, our whole tradition comes out of this line, which says, Rasa Vaisaha Rasam Hiyevayam Latuhanandi Bhavati. Rasa Vaisaha, he, Brahman, the absolute, Krishna, the ultimate Brahman, is Rasa. Rasa is the highest expression of love. So to put it in simple terms, Rasa Vaisaha, God is love. Rasam Hiyevayam Ladvanandi Bhavati. And only when you know him as such, you will be happy. So that's a very powerful one-liner. God is love, and only when you love, when you certainly know him as love, can the soul be happy. So first you have to know that he's love, with all that it implies, with all the implications of a God made of love, and us being loved by him, everyone else. And on that foundation, having established that particular bedrock, that Paribhasa Sutra, Rasam Hiyevayam Latvanandi Bhavati. You can be a Nandi, you can become blissful and happy. So, and again, from that line, Rupa Goswami creates Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in one sense, we could say Gaudiya Sampradaya is formed. So we could say that this idea is such a crucial, pivotal foundation for who we are, for who we want to be. Understanding God is love, Krishna is love, which are the implications of that, and how by playing out each of those implications carefully, we can really become happy. And Susukam Kartum, as Krishna will say in the Gita, we can practice bhakti with joy and happiness, even in the midst of tragedy and suffering. Knowing that still that foundation is there, despite loss, betrayal, tragedy, love is there. As we say it also. Krishna loves you, that's the only certainty we are given. Everything else is uncertain. Everything else is absolutely uncertain, but that Krishna loves you, that's absolute certitude. And we, on the foundation of that certitude, we can coexist with everything else being uncertain. But if we don't have that certitude, no amount of other types of certitude prove enough. And we will never be happy. We will never be at peace. So yeah, we should learn to rest, if you will, to be drenched into this idea of being already accepted, embraced, and loved, which of course is only half of the equation. I'm not saying that's the goal of life. The goal of life is not to be loved by Krishna, because that's already happening. The goal of life is to return the embrace, to love him back. No, Krishna Prem. Krishna Prem doesn't mean love from Krishna, it means love for Krishna. So that's the other half of the conversation. What happens when you fully embrace and become aware of how loved you are? Naturally, you want to return the embrace, you want to love Krishna back for the right reasons. Not out of intimidation, out of guilt, out of shame, out of fear, but out of fulfillment and gratitude and overflowing of the gift. And of course, then we have to speak about how Krishna then reciprocates to our reciprocation. That's another conversation altogether. How Krishna feels for his devotees. Wow, these days I've been writing some concluding chapters on the book about that. And that's so many beautiful things are said in the scripture about how Krishna feels indebted and feels a servant, and feels he had never given enough to his devotee, and gives himself in so many ways, such a humble God that bows himself down to love we have. So again, all that should move us to the point of trying our best on a daily basis. As you said, Mayapur Sangam is a daily process. We may not be there yet. We may never be there yet. and that's and at the same time is an ongoing invitation to be there yet more and more, to continue arriving. In one sense, we are already there, because as I like to say, we are already doing bhakti, and we want to do bhakti for eternity. So we are already doing what we want to do for eternity. So we already arrived. And now the only thing left, if you want to call it that way, is to continue the arrival. It's a perpetual arrival. We can always arrive more deeply to what bhakti means. Okay. I hope that helps. Mayapur Sangam.
Yes, thank you. I missed some words, but I received my answer. And it would be nice to read your book already, Maharaj.
We are on the draft. Sorry. Have to have some patience. Trust the process. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We go to take a relatively quick flight, hopefully, from Austria to California. Adjust with the jet lag. A big difference of time. And here we are now with Rasangi over there.
Thank you, Maharaj. And when you were speaking about our ignorance is the problem, and that is the root word is ignore, right? We're ignoring Krishna. We're ignoring things. Then we suffer. So anyway, thank you, Dandavat Pranams. Lots of affection to everybody, and you, of course. I have something that's really alive for me today. I'm really happy this is happening. And it has to do with the post of Krishna Chandra that you reposted and the responses.
Which
or the
one?
react-
First or second?
Well, the one about can a saint be, highlighting all of the misconceptions and mistakes and quotes and facts that were incorrect or said in Prabhupada's books.
I don't think we addressed that from that place.
It's interesting.
Maybe you are referring to the statements that Srila Prabhupada made about dark-skinned people?
Yeah, and half women being half
Okay,
of
good. Okay.
all of that, of course.
Okay.
So it's a lot that his posts said a lot, and the reactions have been very intense. I know a lot of the people, not everybody, that are reacting, and horrible words are being said, Bhakti blockers, and just terrible things. And I find myself suffering and being really sad, really terribly sad, and confused. And I know that you posted that, and I know it's helped people, but it's also like poking the hornet's nest. It's like poking the hornet's nest, and now there's reverberation and reactions. So, I don't like to read those words and to hear that energy coming at anybody, especially you, of course, and what you're trying to do. So it's really confusing for me. Is that really what we need to do to bring this more into the fold? I was questioning, is this really the way to do it? To kind of create this, it's a reaction that's very negative and hurtful, slanderous. I don't get it. And how do you deal with those comments? Do you not take it personally at all? Does it not hurt you? I don't know how to digest that. And still stand strong, I felt until right then, I felt pretty confident speaking out and speaking what you're teaching us, what we're learning, more of what I know myself to be truth as well. But this is it feels like a little bit of a setback in, in proclaiming or teaching this kind of love and the process of healing and all of that, because there's people that are really tearing it down and claiming it's anti-bhakti and it's aparad, right? To see faults in we know that in pure devotees or anybody is like the anti-Christ kind of mentality. So yeah, and I'm feeling it acutely. I've been talking to friends about it. I wondered if you could address it. Do we really have to go there? Is that where we're meant to go? How do you deal with the backlash? That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, yeah, these last 2 weeks, which has been connected to these 2 posts that I shared from the articles from Krishna Chandra Prabhu, have been intense. Of course, there has been multiple reactions. Let's be fair. It's not that just everyone disagreed with the post or everyone felt that was something inappropriate, but there has been different types of reactions. Some of them, I got to know them by the thread, some others talking to me personally, and again, in different directions. to be fair. I mean, I don't want here to seem like everyone agree with me and everyone should agree with me and everyone was happy with me, nor the other extreme either. But yeah, you are focusing here on the backlash, and there has been backlash. And of course it hurts, no, in the sense that I'm not celebrating that. I personally, and I know some people may not believe this, but I don't like controversy. No, I'm not someone that is like, let's go and disturb everyone and let's break people's faith and let's throw them by force outside of the comfort zone and leave them in the greatest faith crisis possible. I don't think I'm that person, to be honest. My intention in how I try to relate with people personally, I'm not saying that to say I'm a saint and I'm doing everything perfectly, because that's not the case. I'm saying that publicly. I'm not a saint, just in case, not perfect, not pure devotee, not Nitya Siddha, etc. At the same time, I feel that sometimes certain conversations need to be addressed. I'm not saying that always I may present the topics perfectly, so I take my responsibility if I didn't do that ideally, but also I know that in some point there will be always someone who will disagree. Also, that I cannot expect everyone to agree with every single thing I say, because if I do that, probably if I try that to be the case, I may become a people pleaser. And even if I do that, some people won't be pleased with that. Again, my intention is not to have people being displeased or being disturbed or being against oneself. Of course, again, these last days I have to unfriend people, to block others. I've received people canceling podcasts with me and some other things. I won't enter into the details, but and many other things in a positive direction, again, to put everything on the scale. So it's a mixed bag. So you're asking also, Rasangi, how I deal with the backlash. And again, it affects me. I remember when I published my first book, that also created some backlash. I didn't expect that backlash. Of course, that created lots of inspiration. And again, devotees being grateful for that. But some others felt this goes against our teachings. This is a deviation. This is an offense. Again, we know how that narrative unfolds. And I remember writing in the introduction to the book, I'm writing this book, hopefully promoting a conversation among the community and bringing to the table some topics that it's clearly there are differences of opinion on this in the Sampradaya. But yeah, some felt that was not the proper way to address it. And I'm not here to say they are wrong. I'm just saying I think differently. I know that for some devotees, we should not speak publicly about anything potentially disturbing, but also that's complicated because potentially disturbing can be anything. I mean, for some people, it's disturbing that my tilak is not visible, right? Or who knows what? No, for some people, it's disturbing that I'm not quoting Srila Prabhupada saying Srila Prabhupada every 10 words. What's disturbing for everyone is different. So sometimes it's not so much I'm being the disturber, but also why you are getting disturbed. Not to take responsibility out of my shoulders, but also to ascribe responsibility to everyone. And again, I mean, I'm talking publicly now, so I'm also taking the opportunity to apologize and beg forgiveness if anything I've said or done, not only in these articles, but in the past have hurt people, disturbed their faith. To be honest, that has not been my intention. I know I'm not perfect, so I know that many, like Krishna says in the Gita, every action is accompanied by some degree of imperfection. So I'm not saying that to justify anything, but just also to normalize this may happen. But also I feel that my intentions are, and not only mine, I'm now, for example, speaking about Krishna Chandra Prabhu, who wrote the article, and other devotees who have been involved in all that. I know that our intentions are genuine as far as we can see in our conditioning, right? Trying to bring topics that we know have affected the faith of many for decades and still are open and people know about certain statements, and they may need to hear that, okay, some things can be talked about. And I know that by saying, okay, even a saint can have some mild mistakes, for some people that's heresy. And that proves that I've lost all my bhakti sukriti due to offenses. And of course, they will tie that with, okay, that's why your guru rejected you, and who knows. And everyone is free to do their own associations. Again, I'm not here to judge anyone. Everyone is free to do, but at the same time, I feel that there is a lot of judgment. I mean, there's a lot of rushing into concluding about other people and labeling and not being too generous with one another in giving us a chance of engaging more personally, in getting to know why you wrote that, what's the background, what's your intention, what's your understanding. And again, as we were talking the other day, I go back to these 10 points that I mentioned in the introduction to radical personalism, of why not to stay a Gaudiya Vaishnava. And some of those were tribal thinking, fundamentalism, deep cognitive rigidity, poor capacity for dynamic dialogue, and so on. So I think I'm not saying I'm free from that either, but I'm seeing that a lot. So whenever someone brings a different narrative, and it's not a different narrative I'm creating, nor Krishna Chandra is creating, nor whomever is creating, many devotees agree on certain views, and some other devotees have another view. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying we shouldn't just vilify one another or how to say, stigmatize one another because you think differently than me. So at the end of the day, for me, it's not so much about, of course, on the surface, it seems this against this one, right? This group against this group, or this person against this person. But for me, that's all the ego platform, where we see between us and them, friends and enemies, gurus and pandavas. But behind all that, my opinion is that each one has their own list of assumptions that we make about people, and according to our own beliefs, systems, and assumptions and prejudices, many times we already have certain tendencies to go in certain direction. I don't know if you ever heard about this ladder of inference. It's a very interesting sequence, ladder of inference, which begins with observable data that you have, but then you select what you are observing according to your previous experiences, and then you have certain assumptions of that, and then you reach a certain judgment. And anyhow, in 3, 4, 5 steps, you end up crucifying someone by many times something that was not actually there going on. So the other day I shared one quote that came in the Facebook history, like memories. It was very fitting, from Nikola Tesla. Maybe you read that one. It's a very interesting quote. He says, when you understand that every opinion is a vision loaded with personal history, you begin to understand that every judgment is a confession. So again, at least if we are not absolutely enlightened beings, we carry our personal history, and whatever we think or share as an opinion is loaded with that. So instead of actually judging others, we are confessing unconsciously, without maybe being aware of that, confessing our own biases. So for me, this is an Art and Liberty 101, to gain more awareness of how biased we are when we address any topic. And again, I'm not saying that to other people. I'm talking to me to begin with. And because if not, we enter into this conversation of who you think you are. You don't know what you are saying. You are a conditioned being. And by the same strength, I can repeat the same exact phrase and say the same thing to the other person. The way you are concluding about me, are you all enlightened beings? So how are you there? And we can continue like that endlessly, right? And create one Kurukshetra after another. So at the end of the day, I think we need to validate a little bit more personal experience, because I've seen a little bit in these threads, and I've not been following all of them because, again, it can be exhausting. But yeah, a lot of things like, okay, this is what the scripture and the saints say, and what you say is wrong. But at the same time, when we say what scripture and saints say, we are filtering that through our own experience. It's unavoidable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, we can bring so many arguments without end. So you say, okay, you say this person is infallible, but how do you know that person is infallible? Are you infallible? So you can see who is infallible. And again, we can cancel all conversation with this type of argumentation, or continue the conversation as one battlefield after another, which I don't think either of them are the ideal. So yeah, I feel, and I'm not saying, again, I'm not generalizing, saying everyone in the Gaudiya community is there, but still, and we have been talking about this privately with Krishna Chan and other devotees. It's my personal feeling, and I'm not free from that either, but still there is lots of fundamentalism. And I know that fanaticism and rigidity and unwillingness to contemplate the diversity of opinions on one single topic. And for me, many times that's not the symptom of a strong faith. Sometimes it's a symptom of a rigid faith that needs absolute certainty and cannot deal with diversity. And again, I'm not putting everyone on that label and box. Each case is unique. And at the same time, again, I don't want to say I'm imperfect. I don't want to say everything I've done, even with that posting, how I've dealt with it, has been the best possible way. I've apologized for that. It has not been my intention to disturb anyone, but I know that sometimes it's complicated. I know that Facebook lends itself to those types of exchanges, and if you pay attention, I've not been posting anything like that for a long time. Generally, I'm not going there with postings. So it's not that I'm passionate about controversy in every week, putting something, but these two came talking with Krishna Chandra. He sent those to me in our exchange. It was not planned. There's no conspiracy behind. It just came naturally. I felt, I shared it. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I was not able to measure the potential reaction. I'm sorry if I disturb anyone. Sincerely, it's not my intention. I don't want to see my bhakti journey accompanied by more thorns than the ones I already have. But sometimes they have to be. And I don't want to sound a martyr either, because I know it's easy to play the victim and, oh, poor me, poor me. And I need to also learn to take responsibility. I chose to make that publication, those two publications, so I take responsibility for whatever came. But also, I cannot take full responsibility for how each person chooses to react to my publication. That will be too much, because I was talking with the devotee the other day, and he told me, if whatever someone says disturbs the faith of someone, one is responsible for that. And I disagree with that. Because if I'm saying something without intention of disturbing anyone, but I'm just saying something that is not even like controversial, but something that is different from how that person is accustomed to hear, that may disturb their faith. For example, probably some disciples of Srila Prabhupada, when they went to Srila Siddhar Maharaj, some of them were disturbing their faith. Not because Srila Siddhar Maharaj was a bad person or had any bad intention, but just because he said things differently than Srila Prabhupada. And some devotees went with the expectation, we will receive a copy-paste version of Prabhupada. And that didn't happen. Srila Siddhar Maharaj thought for himself and had his own words and realization, and that disturbed the faith of some that took a distance, that considered Srila Siddhar Maharaj an offender and someone who is teaching. I'm not one here to compare myself with Srila Siddhar Maharaj, just giving an example from our tradition. And they felt they had their faith disturbed, quote unquote, by Srila Siddhar Maharaj. So are we to blame Srila Siddhar Maharaj for that? I don't think so. So again, I'm not one to say, so the same happens with me. I'm saying I may have done some things that I have to take responsibility for, and maybe I'm reaping the fruits of that now in one way or another, whatever that may be. So I'm willing to do that, but I want to be clear that my intention is not in disturbing anyone's faith, but at the same time, how to say, I am who I am. And I know I have to still polish myself, but I cannot force myself to be someone completely different for everyone to be happy with me, or for everyone to not feel disturbed with me. Because I know for some people, for them to not be disturbed about me, I may need to stop existing or to become another person. And that doesn't happen only with me. It happens with everyone. No? Sometimes we feel with other people ourselves, oh, if that person will be like this, which will imply be a completely different entity, then I wouldn't be disturbed. But that doesn't happen. So sometimes also on some level, yes, of course, I have my homework to do, and I'm trying to pray these days and be introspective. I'm here by myself for a whole week in Ananda ashram, so trying to use this solitary retreat time for reflect as much as I can on this. Just by being by yourself, it naturally happens. And I don't want to I don't want to be blind to criticism. I don't want to become my own point of reference when nobody can tell me anything. But at the same time, I cannot just accept whatever anyone has to say about me if it's not coming from a place that I feel is wholesome, healthy, real. So, and I know that if I do not accept some of those things, some people may think, you don't accept anything, you're arguing, you're not surrendering, you're not. So at the end of the day, we cannot control everyone's opinion of ourselves, right? So at one point, one has to be detached on a certain level and release. And I'm willing to talk with everyone as long as the approach comes from a radically personal place, when the person is interested in talking to me, not so much talking about me, talking to me and getting to know me as a person, and I reciprocate accordingly. I'm willing to invest my time, but if that's not the case, I'm not willing to invest my time there. I offer my prayers, hopefully, and well-wishing affection to everyone, but I'm not offering my time to everyone because I have 24 hours per day. So I have to use that time properly. So again, I'm with all of this, I don't want to paint myself as a hero, as a perfect being, as someone who did everything correctly, work in progress. So I want to acknowledge criticism, but I think also criticism has to be handled in a certain way. And if I myself fail in that, probably I'm receiving a result of that in a similar way. Who knows? I'm open to acknowledge that. So yeah, it's hard sometimes. I can feel how it affects my body. Backlash. I'm not, again, I don't want to, as I mentioned to Namras, I remember in the podcast, according to the Enneagram, I'm a 9 who is the peacemaker. So whenever there's conflict, I don't feel comfortable. My whole body is like in tension. And I know that whenever I wrote these articles, I mean, I'm naive, but maybe not that naive to think there will be no problem with this. I didn't think like that. So I knew on some level, okay, I'm entering into some arena here. But at the same time, I know that sometimes that's a price to pay to bring some topics to the table. Sometimes it may not be in the most graceful and elegant way, sorry for that. But at the same time, I think there is some value in inviting for the conversation. And again, the big challenge of coexisting with differences of opinion. And even if I think you are wrong, I don't need to hate you. No? Even if you think I'm wrong, we can even tell each other, I think you are wrong. And that doesn't mean that I have to insult you or who knows, call you names. That's for me a very interesting level of Vaishnava dialogue and communication, where we can really acknowledge our opinions, take responsibility for that in a way that is respectful, dignifying, honest. We are not forced to agree with everyone. We can explain and justify our points, and we can appreciate diversity and grow in that. I think that's important. And if some backlash comes, which will always be there, something that personally helps me a lot is not to take that personally. The moment I take it personally, it's him or her against me. I'm creating an imaginary battlefield in my mind. I creating this divide, us and them, Pandavas, Kurus, Kurukshetra in my mind, instead of seeing the non-dual unity and family that we all belong to. And by creating that divide in my mind, anxiety kicks in, and not so much by the backlash itself, but by the division I've created, that by the dualism in which I'm creating these two teams, so to say. And again, I'm failing in that on a daily basis. It's not so easy to walk that talk, but I know it's important to learn how to crawl that talk, at least to begin with. So yeah, that's where I am today. And again, I apologize. And again, I'm not perfect, and I know that apology also has to be personal. Making a general apology may seem too abstract, but whomever wants to talk in person, I'm willing to apologize for things that I really feel worthy of being apologizing. Of course, not by force, but I think it's healthy that we are open. That there are so many things we need to apologize for, each one of us.
Maharaj.
And forgive each other as well. No?
Oh, yeah.
Forgive each other.
I'm not blaming you at all, but it's my own grappling with what to do with it that I'm dealing with. Like, I want to respond to them. Part of me wants to respond, but I don't want to talk about the content. I want to talk about how the Vada kind of communication that lifts each other up instead of trying to destroy each other. It's just simply that. But it's too scary. I'll become a target too. I think if I do that, I'm going to be under fire. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And of course, hopefully we all want to engage in that type of conversation, Vada, where both parties or parts are interested in the truth, not in winning or being right. But not everyone is willing or ready for that. And I'm not saying we are fully ready or willing either. I'm just making a statement. Some days we may be more willing than others. But I agree that sometimes social media is not the best platform for Vada. So I'm learning my lessons the hard way. Agreeing that not everyone is ready for that or willing for that, and that doesn't mean we need to cancel or crucify them either, but that's not the moment for that conversation. Krishna is time personified, so trying to honor the time principle, we will engage in conversation with those who will be open to that type of conversation.
And then wait, one last thing, just let it be. Just let them go with their, and then just ignore it because it's too risky and it's not going to be productive. That's, you know what I mean? Just sometimes people, when they're not ready, you don't engage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just sharing my thoughts. I mean, if in my perception, I feel someone is not ready to engage in a Vada conversation, and I think I am, again, according to my perception, I cannot force myself onto that person. I cannot force that conversation onto the other person. So, I may take it a respectful distance, but hopefully not out of resentment, or because you can take a distance from someone being very violent in your mind. No? Crucifying that person in your mind. So that's not that's not Vada. Right? So how to do that also, how to take distance, no? In a way that is dignifying, in a way that is respectful, in a way that is humbling, that is well-wishing, that is compassionate. So in our tradition, we hear a lot, okay, you have to worship God and be friends with devotees and compassionate to the innocent and take a distance. Sometimes it's safe from the envious, or you can fill in with whatever is the case that you need to take distance from. But we need also to elaborate the art of taking distance, so to say. It's not just running away. No, it's not just being indifferent. It's not just taking a distance, and from that distance, I continue to crucify you, no, even more. Mm-hmm. And in one sense, all these online dynamics are complex, and I'm probably becoming more and more aware of all those layers of complexity, because in one sense you are at a distance. No? Nobody's talking to each other personally. So everything is from a distance. Although we are not taking a distance, we are trying to talk about each other, but from a distance. So it's not very accurate, because many times we don't even know who is the other person. We don't know each other. We don't know how they're feeling. So, so I know one can share something publicly, like I'm doing now, actually. And I don't know, someone is watching this in YouTube from who knows where, and I don't know who is that person. I don't know how they're taking that. And I cannot control that. So it's also complex, because what to do? I will stop giving lectures so people doesn't get disturbed. I don't think also that's the case. So I will stop writing books, because I don't know who may end up buying the book and may end up getting disturbed. So no. so I feel that, at least for me, that's my conclusion, and I may be deadly wrong, but that's as much as I could conclude honestly about that. Is I try to share with the best possible intention. I'm willing to correct myself and clarify and engage in conversation if something is not clear, someone was disturbed, but let the conversation be open, because if not, it starts to sound to me more like a totalitarian regime. Like there's only one official narrative. If you don't subscribe to that narrative, you immediately become the scapegoat. And everyone gets unified and fortified in their union by attacking the one who is being scapegoat. I mean, religion throughout history has done that always. And we are not the exception to that rule. And there is sometimes part of these totalitarian regimes is there is an over-idealized leader that whatever comes from that person is absolute in every sense of the term. And again, whomever dares to say anything about that immediately becomes an enemy. So all that are kind of the template for dictatorship. If you study all those throughout history, China, Nazi, and so on, very similar patterns. And you can see all of them playing out in, I mean, those happen because they play out in human psyche cross-culturally. Now, you don't even need to get to an official totalitarian regime. It can start, like I mentioned in radical personalism, some slow erosions of normalcy, gradually. And at one point you have that. Nobody noticed that because it happened gradually. So when then you have cancel culture and silence culture, and again, nobody can say anything. And if they say something, apparatus, label, branded, we already talked about that so many times. And we may need to continue talking about that, because these are issues that need to be addressed. But from hopefully from a constructive perspective, as I was sharing the other day in this Swami Reacts section that we started, and I was sharing some thoughts on Richard Rohr's book, The Tears of Things, and how he emphasizes the need for a licensed critic in a tradition. He will call that a prophet, someone that the tradition nourishes and protects and appreciates, and is someone who is inside the tradition, but criticizing the tradition as an insider, not as an outsider throwing rocks, but as an insider, not so inside. He will say that person lives in the edge of the inside. It's in the inside, but it's on the edge, so he can be or she can be aware of what's taking place outside of that bubble, and from that offer feedback. And he will say, we need people trained to perform that function, to offer that service, so the communities remain sober and remains not like self-obsessed and self-centered and self-isolated. So, and I'm not here saying, I am that person, I'm trying to be that person, I have to be that. I'm not saying that. I identify with someone doing that, and I don't think it's only one person. I think many of us need to have their own voice and offer some loving critique from a good heart, from good intended place. And we can be educated enough to appreciate that and not feel threatened by that and in the need of attacking and canceling whatever contradicts the official narrative. So yeah, still work in progress.
And Maharaj, I think that the fact that I could bring this to you is a
Really?
sign of our health, that I could bring this to us and we discuss it is a sign of our great fortune and health, that I don't have to suffer in silence and then doubt. I can bring it. We talk about it. Actually, yesterday I listened to your talk about Richard Rohr's new book, and I was comforted. So throughout the last week, I've been feeling this way. But as I listen to you, him, your talk with Yogeshwar, I've been comforted, back into feeling great about it, about whatever happens.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your addressing it today so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the very fact that we can talk about it, I mean, that's a basic foundational democratic principle of free speech, so to say. Right? Even if we end up disagreeing, absolutely, but at least we can talk about it. We can talk and then realize that we disagree of what we are talking, but we can talk. But the problem is when we cannot talk, when that's not given us, we are not given permission to talk, or if we do, we know which are the consequences. So I know that there's a risk in talking, and we can be disagreeing, we can be wrong, mistaken, but I remember Gandhi when he was told by the British, we cannot give you Indians the freedom because you don't know what to do with freedom. And he said, well, at least we want to have the freedom to be mistaken, right? So you have to begin with that foundation. If you don't allow that foundation to happen, there is no freedom. That's slavery. That's not healthy. And there will be mistakes again. Because if we want to prevent mistakes and all that stuff, and you cancel freedom for that to happen, you cancel dialogue. It's like a mother, like Oedipus complex, and the mother is like putting the child locking the child in a room, so nothing happens to him, and they love each other, quote unquote, but the child becomes a monster in that little room. So, yeah, I think the very fact that we can have this conversation is great, and so I know that sometimes the price of that is that there may be some dynamics like the ones you've been referring to, Prasangi, but for me, to be honest, putting all on the scale, it ends up being favorable because we can still talk about it, and hopefully, again, talk about it compassionately and not pointing at groups or individuals and they are the bad guys and promoting, reinforcing hate and rejection. But hopefully we can do it in a healing, wholesome way. Hopefully, let's pray for that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have a few more minutes and we have one raised hand from Sweden. So we invite Vishaka Dasi to activate, unmute herself.
Yes. Jai, thank you. Set my obeisances to everybody here. Maharaj, I have a question. In the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna, he says, this chapter 4, verse 9, Janma karma cha me divyam, where he ends up that the one who knows me in truth will go back to my abode, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know it by heart.
It's fine, yeah.
You have also we have sometimes been talking about the description of the Lord as an ever-expanding. He's ever-expanding and he's always evolving. And you've been mentioning a couple of times where, like Radharani, she doesn't recognize Krishna 5 minutes after she has been with him.
5 seconds.
5 seconds, yeah. So there seems to be like a contradiction here, because like if he's ever expanding and he's always evolving and always becoming more and more fresh or more and more new, then how can you get so much knowledge of him that you can say that, oh, now I know Krishna, and then be sure to go back? I mean, there doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a contradiction, but still, I would love your a few thoughts on that one.
Okay, thank you. Beautiful question. Beautiful verse you've referred to. That's one of my favorite verses in the Bhagavad-gītā. Janma karma chame divyam evanjo veti tattvataha tyaktvam tyaktvan punam. I forgot the last part. Tyaktva punar janma naiti mameti Arjuna. So this is Bhagavad-gītā 4:9. Great verse to speak on Janmashtami or Gaur Purnima, days of the appearance of the Lord. Tomorrow is Ram Navami, so another great day to invoke that. So I personally like to concentrate on that line in connection to your question. Krishna is saying, Janma karma chame divyam. First he says, my birth, my janma, and my karma. Of course, karma here means lila, activity, or divya, no? Janma karma chame divyam. So my birth and my actions are all divine, divya, transcendental. Ivanjo veti tattvadaha, one who knows that, in fact, as it is, tattvadaha, and then comes the second line, does not return to this world after leaving this body, basically, obtains liberation, salvation. So, for me, the main point, the main word in this verse is tattvadaha, which is, in fact, or as it is. So what does it mean to know the purpose or the nature of God's appearance, avatar, descend into this world? Because in that, the context of that verse is avatar tattva, right? Krishna is speaking about him coming to this world over and over again. Paritranaya, sadhunam, all these verses that come before. So he's saying, for that who knows in truth the nature of my appearance and activities, for that person there is no more birth and death. No. So in one sense, for he who knows the nature of my birth, that person doesn't take birth anymore. Right? So what's the nature of Krishna's birth? That's the real question here. What takes him to come to this world, basically? Let's use this poetic usage. What drags him down from Golok here, by the force of love, by the force of mercy, by the force of affection? And there are multiple reasons, of course. No, and of course, ultimately, Jiva Goswami explains in the Sandarbhas, the ultimate reason is Krishna is coming to reciprocate with his devotees, with those devotees. A verse before that one, Krishna is saying, Paritranaya sadhunam, right? Vinashaya chaduskritam, etc. So 4:8, Krishna is saying, I come, Paritranaya sadhunam, to protect my sadhus, to protect my devotees. So again, the question could be presented, why Krishna needs to come to protect his devotees? No, I mean, he can protect his devotees without the necessity of him coming, or protecting them from what? If the devotees already surrendered to Krishna, what can be a danger for them? And some commentators have explained, no, here sadhunam refers to those devotees who are dying in separation from Krishna, and they need to be protected from themselves, from that impending separation, by Krishna appearing in front of them and giving them his darshan. And he will save their lives in that way. So again, all this is before the other verse that you quoted. For he who understands the purpose of my birth. You follow my point? So that's implied in the previous verse. Now, he's coming out of love for his devotees, and of course, by extension, out of unconditional love for everyone. But of course, there is this special highlight in those who love Krishna passionately, his bhaktas, his sadhus. So for them, he comes. For them, and of course, we can speak about the Brajavasis who are on earth, and he comes for those eternal associates to interact in Lila with them. And there are so many statements by our acharyas which even will highlight the experience of the Bhauma Lila or the Lila on earth more than the Lila on Golok Vrindavan, although we don't want to enter into better, worse idea, but there's a special highlight features on the Lila on earth. So we could say Krishna is coming for all of that. And of course, depending which form of God we are talking about, we can explain this verse differently. If we are talking about this verse on the Gita and Gaur Purnima, what makes Mahaprabhu come to the world? What's the background of Gaur avatar? And for that, we need to go to Krishna Lila and narrate how Krishna becomes moved by the love of the Vrajavasis and the Gopis and Sri Radha in particular, and how he states at the zenith of the Bhagavatam, Napariham Nirabhadyasam Jujam, I don't know how to reciprocate with you, I'm eternally indebted, but once in a day of Brahma will come. So to know all those things, all that backdrop to the descent of the Lord is the meaning of Tattvataha in this verse of the Gita. You're saying to know why he's coming. But of course, this doesn't mean to have some like intellectual certainty. Again, like I know everything about Krishna now. No, he's ever evolving, as you mentioned, no? As the scriptures mention. One name of the Absolute, the main name through which the Absolute is referred to in the Vedanta tradition, in the Upanishads, mostly is Brahman. Brahman. So Brahman is not necessarily referring to something impersonal. It's a name for the Absolute. In many Vaishnava traditions, I would say most of the Vaishnava traditions, except for ours, they will mostly use the word Brahman to refer to the Absolute. Ramanujacharya, Ballavacharya. If you watch my podcast with, what's her name? Escape my mind. The scholar from the Ballava Sampradaya that I invited.
The more I learn
let me check. Sorry, I'm checking.
It is the
Maitri Goswami. If you watch my podcast with Maitri Goswami, she repeatedly refers to Brahman. So I remember I had to clarify in the podcast, like she's referring to what we will say Krishna by the name Brahman, right? Because the word Brahman comes from the root Brim, and Brim means to grow and make others grow. No? That which grows and makes others grow. That's Brahman. That's the direct meaning of Brahman, which basically speaks about this ever-expansiveness. Brahman is that which expands and makes everything else expand. And Krishna, our Brahman, he's referred to in the scripture as Parabrahman. So if Brahman means he who expands and makes others expand, Krishna is called Parabrahma or Purna Brahma. These are the prayers of Brahman, not Brahman, Brahma in the Brahma Vimohan Lila. Aho bhagyam nanda gopa brajokasam yan mitram paramanandam Purna Brahma Sanatanam. He's praying to the Gopas. How fortunate are these Brajavasis that he who is the supreme Brahman, the absolute joy of everyone, has become their friend. What's their fortune? So he's referring there to Krishna's Purna Brahma, the complete, all-expansive. So again, going back for a moment to Bhagavad-gītā 4.9, Janma karma cha me divyam divanjubeti tattvataha. To know Krishna, in fact, as it is, has nothing to do with some intellectual certainty, but just to know that, among other things, he's ever evolving, he's ever expanding. So out of his ever expanding experience of love, his contents ever fresh relishing of prem, of rasa, that takes him to be born in this world over and over again, because we hear Krishna is coming to this world over and over again. It's not that he comes once, finishes his business, I don't have anything else to do here, I'm leaving. Again, he's ever evolving, so there's always something new to experience. And that's why Jiva Goswami says, whenever Bhagavan finishes one lila on earth, he's starting immediately another, in another place, the same thing. So it's ongoing, without stop forever, but never the same, always ever evolving. So part of the Tattvataha of this verse of the Gita, Gita 9:4-9, is to know Krishna as it is, to know Krishna in truth, as a supreme Brahman, as he who remains in constant expansion and invites everyone else to that same dance of unfoldingness. So, and to understand how that is what propels his avatar, his descent into this world, his karma, his lila, as this verse says, janma karma, my birth, my actions. So why Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gītā, I'm not forced to act, but nonetheless I act, right? So that means he's not engaging in karma, as we will refer to karma as forced labor, propelled by the gunas. That's not, he doesn't engage in that, he's beyond that, but nonetheless he acts. So how he acts? His action is lila, and lila means action moved by another type of motivation, by love, by a celebration of his fullness. Again, there we go again to the ever-evolvingness. No, the ever-evolving experience of loving God is what keeps him moving, what keeps him dancing. That's what he's called Natavar, the king of dancers. He doesn't stop his dancing. He doesn't stop his celebration. That's lila, celebratory movement. So Krishna says in that verse of the Gita, Janma karma chame divyame vanjaveti tatvataha. For those who know the real nature of my birth and activities, the real background, what propels me to appear in this world, what propels me to engage in lila with my devotees, which is all ever-evolving love, basically that person goes there. That person becomes an intimate member of my family. As Srila Maharaj will explain Bhagavad-gītā 1855. Bhakti mama vijanati javam tasmi tattvataha. Again, the word tattvataha is there. And it ends saying, Bishati tadanantaram. That person enters in me. And this verse, of course, is favorite from the Advaita Vedantians, because they will say, okay, Krishna is saying that he enters in me. Bishati tadanant. So that means merging in Brahman. But Srila Siddha Maharaj will say, no, he enters in me means he becomes an intimate member of my family. No, he enters into my entourage. He becomes part of my heart and my family. No? We are family now. Anyhow, some thoughts. I hope that helps, Vishaka, to make further sense of this beautiful verse from the Gita.
Well, yeah, thank you. It was very beautiful explanation you gave. It's more to meditate on, more to digest it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, according to our normal time, we have still a few more minutes, and I'm seeing Bhadra raising her hand from New Zealand. So please, Bhadraji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj and everyone. Sorry I was a little bit late. Didn't realize we had daylight saving change this morning. So have we got time for another Bhagavad-gītā question?
Yes, let's go. Bhagavad-gītā ki jai.
Okay. In chapter 2, I'm wondering about a contradiction. I've wondered about this for years. An apparent contradiction in Arjuna's speech. In verse 7, he says, Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. And two verses later in number 9, he says, Nayotsya, I will not fight. So it's he's surrendering himself. I am a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. And then he said, he seems to contradict himself. I will not fight.
Yeah.
Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, thank you. I've heard different commentaries on the verse, different opinions on that particular apparent contradiction you point to. One, I will mention the two main ones because we don't have that much time to go into further detail, but the main one, the first main one will be, okay, someone say, okay, first Arjuna is saying, Sisyasteham sadhanam prapanam, I'm surrendered to you, I'm your disciple. No, that's a famous line. I'm your disciple, I'm someone surrendered to you, please instruct me. But then 2 verses after, Arjuna is saying to Krishna, I won't fight. So it seems like, hey, you surrendered 2 verses ago, right? So some will explain like, okay, Arjuna in one sense is representing us, right? There is a big, I mean, if not, the Bhagavad-gītā wouldn't be at all relatable for us, right? It's actually talking to us. So some will have explained that like, sometimes we may say I surrender to you, but then 2 verses after we are realizing I just render lip service to the notion of surrender, and in practice I'm not doing that. No. So that's a valid interpretation on some level. You can understand that happens. We can say I surrender to you, and we have surrender on some level, because surrender, again, it's not a black and white issue, right? It's not I'm surrender, I'm not surrender. So I may have said, okay, sisyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam, I surrender to you, Gurudev, Vaishnava, I'm your student, please instruct me. And we did that on some level, but then something happened that invited us for a deeper level of surrender, and we didn't pass the test, let's put it that way. No? So that can happen. It doesn't cancel the previous surrender. It just means 2 verses after, 2 verses after, you are already invited to a further level of surrender. And you may fail miserably about that. But no problem. Then comes another verse, another chance of surrendering again. No? So that's one level of interpretation of the verse, like more general, more applicable to us, that we may render lip service without bad intention to the notion of surrender, may have a naive black and white idea of surrender and think, okay, now I surrender. And then life happens and we find ourselves resisting the very thing we proclaimed 2 verses ago, so to say. It happens, part of the game. No, don't go crazy. You just go back to, you just aim properly again. Hamartya, you missed the mark. Go properly. Like the other day I was reading something from Thomas Keating, a famous Christian mystic. He was talking, somehow related, he was presenting his practice of centering prayer to some nuns at that time, decades ago, which is basically sitting for 20 minutes in total silence and trying to abide in God, so to say, from their perspective internally, and to be present for the divine without thinking about anything, just being present. And of course, he was introducing that to them, and at the end of the test, some of the nuns said, oh, how did it go, he asked. And one said, oh, it was terrible. My mind went off like 10,000 times in those 20 minutes. And he replied, oh, lovely. 10,000 opportunities to go back to God, to return to God, to return to God's concern. So that's how he saw it, right? Instead of 10,000 times you were distracted. Wow, so bad you are. No. Wow, 10,000 times to choose God back, right? So in the same way, I'm saying this in this context. Now, we may be missing the mark in our surrender proclamation. We say something and then we miss the mark. We have always a chance to continue aiming more accurately. So that's the first reading of that section, which shows a contradiction, clear contradiction, pointing to how much we may contradict on a daily basis. And a deeper layer or a deeper reading will be Arjuna is actually fully surrendered to Krishna, and therefore he's becoming a surrender instrument in Krishna's hands. And on that foundation, he's saying, I won't fight. You will fight through me. That's the point. I won't fight from an egoic place. I am the doer. Not like the Gita says 3:27, prakrite kriyamanani, no? Kartahamiti manjate, right? False ego is I am the doer. I am the fighter. I am the warrior. It's all up to me. Arjuna is surrendering that part of himself. And on that foundation, he's denying that separatistic, egocentric authorship. I won't fight. No, I'm not the doer here. I'm a puppet in your hands. So in that deeper way, we can also read that line, which is, in that case, will resolve the contradiction. Actually, the I won't fight is a natural expression of his surrender 2 verses before that, right? I surrender to you. You do with me as you please. I want to be an instrument. Still, he has his will, but he's also surrendering to Krishna's will. Does it make sense, Bhadra? Did it?
Very much, Maharaj. Those are wonderful answers. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I especially resonate with the first part. Well, both aspects, but Yes, that's how we can commit, or I can commit to something, and then a few days or even a few hours later, catch myself out. Oh, I'm not really committed, am I? So yeah, I that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy that that contradiction was resolved, and tonight you will have a more peaceful resting. Okay, I think we are on time now. I don't see any more raised hands, so we will put our sharing to rest for a moment. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Sri Harinam Prabhu.